trumpet sounds at very important events. The trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible. Before that corruption can put on incorruption, first of all, the commandments of God must be in their heart. The first trumpet that was to sound, given in the Bible, was before the declaration of the Ten Commandments. To gather his people to receive his word, the warning is given. So the trumpets are of pure silver, those given or commanded of God to be used to draw an assembly of the people together. The words of the Lord are pure words as silver, tried in the furnace of the earth, purified 7 times. Why the judgment against Romanism, both in the West and the East? Mary and the dead saints. God said, "Have no other gods before me." Other gods were worshipped. There were graven images made, replications that were worshipped, kissing the feet of Christ, as it were, in statues, taking the name of the Lord in vain, priests giving absolution, worshipping on a festival day to celebrate the sun. All these things that pertain to the worship of God, all these commands have been broken. Peter has lost the outline of his toes because his foot has been kissed so many times. This is not what Christ has asked for, to kiss and adore images. Adoration is not to be given to dead saints, but to a living God. Is not he the God of the living? At the fall of Jericho, Israel walked around the city in order, the order that God had given, 7 times. Who pulled the walls down? It was the armies of heaven, not the armies of men. But as they put their trust in God, the walls fell down. So they were to enter into the promised land. The last 3 trumpets are 3 woes. We're going to speak of these 3 woes and 3 powers from the bottomless pit, and time prophecies that have already been fulfilled. By this we know, because of their fulfillment, where the position of these trumpets are, because many applications are made, but we want something that gives us a solid foundation. The time prophecies will help us to do that. And if we understand that this is concerning the fall of the Roman Empire, it has physical and spiritual application to its total destruction and the coming of Christ and the resurrection of the dead. I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day and heard behind me a great voice as of a trumpet. He turned around, and who did he see? It was Christ himself, the risen Saviour. In Revelation 4:1 it says, "After this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven, and the first voice which I heard was as it were of a trumpet talking to me, which said, Come up hither, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter." Revelation 8, verse 3. Another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense which came with the prayers of the saints ascended up before God out of the angel's hand. The angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar, and cast it into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. And the 7 angels which had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. The image of Daniel 2 gave us a broad detail of the nations to the end of time, and is the cornerstone of prophecy. The destruction of Rome would result in the weak and strong nations of Europe, and the kingdom of this world would be destroyed by the coming of Christ. This is what we're looking at here. The fall of Rome is both spiritual and physical, and there is a change from that which is pagan to that which is papal. So in order to get to the seventh trumpet, in order to understand the first trumpet, we have to have some background as to how this change occurred. Then as we go along, not at the first trumpet, but at subsequent trumpets, we have time periods that will pinpoint where the trumpets are in history, give us an idea of the appropriateness of time. The empire is racked by internal strife and the threat of barbarians, but Diocletian emerges to unify the empire. This work his predecessor had done, but before he could finish, Aurelian was assassinated. He had united the empire's soldiers under the gods of Rome. Diocletian divided the Roman Empire because it had become so large, and a mobile army to deal with the frontiers was needed. The empire was divided into four with co-emperors. Diocletian ruled in the east and took the sons of other ruling emperors or co-emperors into his direct care and training. Constantine was one of the sons who proved to be a great military tactician. Christianity was seen as a threat by Diocletian to the empire, and under his rule persecution reached its peak. The gods of Rome, such as Jupiter, Juno, etc., were the ones that they followed and worshipped, but of many gods altogether. While Diocletian remained in charge, you can see how the empire was divided up to maintain rule over the empire, to stop the barbarian invasion. Diocletian sought unity in the empire by appeasing Rome's gods. The spread of Christianity meant persecution followed. The empire could not have survived under this idea because of the spread, growing wealth and influence of Christianity. All soldiers had to make sacrifice to the gods of Rome. Diocletian had united the Roman Empire, which had fallen into factions, but the persecution on Christians heightened under the emperor, which would prove the ruin of the empire if that had continued. The illness and demise of Diocletian means Constantine can now travel to his father in Gaul, who was a co-emperor, with the realization that he may never be emperor through Diocletian. So his energy and military training helps his father and means that he is successor to his father, and this is without dispute. The soldiers take him as their leader. He is a good military fighter, strategist. At Constantine's father's death, he is made emperor, realized for his leadership and military skill. At this time, the co-emperor's son looks for control, for there are many co-emperors, and Constantine made a pact by agreement and by marriage of his sister to seize control of the empire until, in the end, Constantine would fight his brother-in-law Licinius and see him beheaded to take to himself the entire empire. First of all, it started with putting down a usurper in Rome, and then together with Licinius he continued across the whole empire, and then against Licinius himself. Christianity was illegal in the empire until the Emperor Constantine and Licinius agreed in 313 to what became known as the Edict of Milan. This was a strategy first but in place before he had won the battles for the empire. The Edict of Milan was an important one. An agreement had been made between Licinius and Constantine that the persecution against Christians would not continue. In Italy itself, in the southern area, the co-emperor's son, who had right to the throne, had been plotted against and killed, and another took his place, and there was a disruption down there because of the harsh tyranny of this ruler. So Licinius and Constantine took this as an opportunity to take this area first, and then to follow on to take the rest of the empire. But before the battle, Constantine was worried, because his troops were outnumbered. At noonday he saw before him the sign of a cross, as a sign in the sky, of light. He said it was above the sun, and it had the inscription, "Conquer by this." I want you to note also here in Deuteronomy, and it's also, Paul speaks of this, "Cursed is he of God that hangs on a tree." The symbol actually of the cross was both a pagan sexual symbol and used here to be included in Christian ideology, and has been carried through since this time. Before this time, the cross was not used as a symbol to denote Christians. Constantine's arch does not show any signs of Christian symbols of the famous battle for Rome. Rather, it was expedient for him, because Christians were found in his army and in other armies or peoples that he wished to join to his army, that he should take on Christianity and meld it with paganism. Of course, here on the shield is a pagan symbol. How Constantine would deal with the empire was to place himself in the middle of the empire, closer to Persia, making Byzantine the new capital, to be known as Constantinople. This would be divided amongst his sons, Constantine II, Constantius II, and Constans. He also had 2 daughters. Constantine, in fact, had 4 sons. The eldest was Crispus, the first son of his first marriage, and he was a great military warrior like his father, who helped him in campaigns that he might not have otherwise succeeded in. He was about to receive the empire, Crispus was, together ruling with his father, when his second wife accused Crispus of trying to seduce her. Crispus is exiled, and before the truth of his wife's lie is exposed, his son is killed, and his wife is also killed by order of Constantine. They were both killed by the order of Constantine. Constantine, like Augustus, failed to make a proper provision for his successors. This may have been because what had happened to Crispus. At his death in 337, his 3 remaining sons divided the empire between them, and this division gave rise to another period of quarrels and civil strife. Pontifex Maximus was the head of the Roman pagan religion. First Christian emperors are still retained the title of Pontifex Maximus, which under imperial law actually made them the head of the church. It was by this authority, for example, that Constantine called the Council of Nicaea to settle the Arian controversy. The term Pontifex Maximus were doubtless originally employed with the reference to the Jewish high priesthood, says the Catholic Encyclopedia, whose place the Christian bishops were regarded as holding each in its own diocese. Well, that is found nowhere in the Bible. It's actually found to be the priesthood of Babylon, literally. Although he kept some remains of the old city, New Rome, Constantinople, 4 times the size of Byzantium, was said to have been inspired by the Christian God, yet remains classical in every sense. Built on 7 hills, just like the old Rome, the city was divided into 14 districts. Supposedly laid out by Constantine himself, there were wide avenues lined with statues of Alexander the Great, Caesar, Augustus, Diocletian, and of course Constantine, dressed in the garb of Apollo, with a scepter in one hand and a globe in the other. Constantine's Sunday law, issued 321 AD, let all the judges and town people, and the occupation of all trades, rest on the venerable day of the sun, but let those who are situated in the country freely and at full liberty attend to the business of agriculture, because it often happens that no other day is so fit for the sowing corn and planting vines, lest the critical moment being let slip men should lose the commodities granted by heaven. Of this law so high an authority as the Encyclopaedia Britannica plainly states, it was Constantine the Great who first made a law for the proper observance of Sunday, and who, according to Eusebius, appointed that it should be regularly celebrated throughout the Roman Empire. Before him, and even in his time, they observed the Jewish Sabbath as well as Sunday. As to the degree of reverence with which Sunday was regarded and the manner of its observance, Mosham says that in consequence of the law enacted by Constantine, the first day of the week was observed with greater solemnity than it formerly had been. Yet Constantine permitted all kinds of agricultural labour to be performed on Sunday. Bishop Taylor declares that the primitive Christians did all manner of works upon the Lord's day. The same statement is made by Mora. The day Sunday was not wholly kept in abstaining form common business, nor did they Christians any longer rest from their ordinary affairs. Such was the necessity of those times that during the divine service, decalogues on the Lord's Day, says Cox, there is no evidence that either at this, the time of Constantine, or at a period much later, the observance was viewed as deriving any obligation from the fourth commandment. It seems to have been regarded as an institution corresponding in nature with Christmas, Good Friday, and other festivals of the Church. Of course, the first festival to be brought in and was of contention over centuries was the observance of Sunday Easter, which before that time was a movable day. It was not necessarily kept on a Sunday. The 50 Bibles of Constantine were Bibles in Greek language commissioned in 331 by Constantine I and prepared by Eusebius of Caesarea. They were made for the use of the Bishop of Constantinople in the growing number of Orthodox churches in that very new city. Eusebius quoted the letter of commission in his Life of Constantine, and it is the only surviving source from which we know of the existence of the Bibles. We hear a great deal today about the Sunday law of the Roman Emperor Constantine, 321 AD. Why is it that we do not hear about the corrupt Bible which Constantine adopted and propagated, the version which for 1800 years has been exploited by the forces of heresy and apostasy? This Bible, we regret to say, lies at the bottom of many versions which now flood the publishing houses, the schools, the churches, yes, the many homes, and are bringing confusion and doubt to untold millions. Our authorized version, Bible, vindicated. B.G. Wilkinson. Very good statement made here. Eusebius was a great admirer of Origen and a deep student of his philosophy. He had just edited the 5th column of Exemplar with the Origen Bible. Constantine chose this and asked Eusebius to prepare 50 copies for him. Dr. Price refers to the transaction as follows. Eusebius of Caesarea, the first church historian, assisted by Pamphilus, or vice versa, issued with all its critical marks the 5th column of the Exemplar, with alternate readings from other columns for use in Palestine. The Emperor Constantine gave orders that the 50 copies of this edition should be prepared for use in the churches. The Vaticanus Manuscript Codex B and the Sinaiticus Manuscript Codex Alpha belong to the Eusebius Origen type, and the many authorities believe that they were actually 2 of the 50 copies prepared for Constantine by Eusebius. Dr. Robinson singles out these two manuscripts as possibly two of the 50 Constantine Bibles. He says Constantine himself prepared 50 Bibles from Eusebius, Bishop of Caesarea, for the churches in Constantinople. It is quite possible that Alpha and B are two of these 50s. It is speculated that this commission may have provided motivation for the development of the canon lists, and the Codex Sinaiticus and the Codex Vaticanus are possible surviving examples of these Bibles. There is no evidence among the recordings of the First Council of Nicaea of any determination on the canon. However, Jerome, in his prologue to Judith, makes the claim that the Book of Judith was found by the Nicene Council to have been counted among the number of the sacred scriptures. Of course, this book does not belong to the Protestant manuscripts or Bible. The First Council of Nicaea was a council of Christian bishops convened in Nicaea by the Roman Emperor Constantine in 325 AD. A stand was taken against Arianism and for the teaching of the Trinity. 321, 4 years before Nicaea, Constantine declared Sunday to be an empire-wide day of rest in honour of the sun. At the time of the council, imperial coinage and other imperial motifs still depicted pagan cult symbology in combination with the emperor's image. That hasn't changed today. Coins that Constantine minted after his conversion from paganism to Christianity, with the inscription Sol Victus, the sun god. A good question is asked here. The papacy was not fully established till 538, more than 200 years after Constantine's law. How then can Sunday be called an institution of popery, and the change be attributed to the little horn, according to the prophecy of Daniel, which is a symbol of papal power? The papacy existed in embryo long before Constantine's time. The mystery of iniquity worked even in Paul's day, because he states that, waiting only the removal of the restraining influence of paganism to reveal in its full strength the papacy before the world. The root of the monstrous system of evil runs back far into the churches before its open development. Like the tree which sends its taproot far down into the earth, beyond the sight of the observer, so it is. Through that root, the Sunday has found its way into the professed churches of Christ, and on that tree it appears as one of the most characteristic fruits. As an institution, Sunday is both pagan and papal. As a rival of the Sabbath of the Lord, it is fully papal. No ecclesiastical writer prior to 194 gives the title the Lord's Day to the first day of the week. There are many forgeries. There is the so-called Epistle of Barnabas, which is spurious. There is another letter of Pliny, speaks of the stated day, but does not specify which day of the week it was. The Epistle of Ignatius, said to be a forgery, and the passage which is made to speak of Sunday as the Lord's Day has been interpolated into the forgery. Justin Martyr, AD 140, does not use the term Lord's Day, as is so often asserted. Clement of Alexandria, 194, uses the term ambiguously, perhaps referring to the first day of the week. Victor Bishop of Rome, AD 196, attempted to honour the day by an effort to have Easter uniformly celebrated on that day. That is a very important point that you need to take note of. Easter was one of the first issues that the church used in changing times and laws. Tertullian, AD 200, furnishes the first evidence of an abstinence from labour on that day, meaning the first day of the week. In AD 321, Constantine made a law in behalf of the Venerable Day of the Sun, which was the first Sunday law but this was a pagan edict, Constantine not yet having become even nominally Christian. At his so-called conversion 2 years later, in AD 323, this law for Sunday as a heathen festival, being unrepealed, was made use of by Sylvester, Bishop of Rome, now reckoned in a line of popes to enforce Sunday observance as a Christian institution. Constantine was indeed a political, military strategist, and part of this was his conversion to Christianity, absorbing, having a migration policy, and at the same time control would prove part of his greatness. He would unite the factions of the empire, pagan and Christian, into one. The empire would be settled again under his rule. The same strategy is used today in political campaigns when claiming to be Christian, such as a politician changing his mind on gay rights for political expedience, interpreting the scriptures to suit the day in hope of being Prime Minister, for example. The cross was a curse. A curse is every man hanged upon a tree, Galatians 3:13. Here Paul quotes Deuteronomy 21, 22 and 23. It would not be proper for Christians to decorate their homes with images of Christ impaled. Now would it? No. Here's the symbol that he took into battle. The soldiers took this symbol into battle with him, and the symbol that he carried, Constantine's standard, on this particular coffin, likely to be the coffin of Constantine. Originally, this was in the Faith Mosque, which was at that time a Christian church, and Constantine placed 13 tombs in this area. They were to be of the 12 disciples, and the 13th tomb was of himself. Some suggest that by doing this he claimed himself to be as God or Jesus Christ.